Hi everyone, Angela here. I'm using a set of tea towels to make my extra large hot pad. You can use any cotton fabric to make this. It'll just be like making a small quilt. I'll use these for each side and this one for the binding. Remove all the labels and hanging loops. Pre-wash, press, and then stack them together evenly. Then carefully cut away all the hems, squaring off the fabric. These now measure about 18 by 26 inches. On the top piece, we'll mark long quilting lines. Fold in half lengthwise, crease in the center, and open up again. Use a vanishing ink pen to mark along that center crease. Then mark lines 1.5 inches apart on either side. In between the fabric, I'll be using 2 layers of cotton batting. Just cut them out the same size. To sandwich the cotton batting in between, roll up these layers, place the other piece of fabric wrong side up, and then roll on top. Clip together all around and pin in several places through all the layers. I'm using a Brother NV50S sewing machine. The link for this and the tools I use are in the description below. Make sure to use coupon code NOTCHES NV50S for the special offer. This pad is thick, so increase the stitch length to 3.5, and if you have a walking foot, you can use that as well. Start by holding on to the top and bobbin thread and sew a few stitches. Start the stitching from the center line on the fabric. There's no need to back tack. At the end of the line, continue stitching about 2 inches and then trim a tail about 1/2 inch long. This will help prevent the thread from tangling up at the start of the next line. Continue stitching the lines to the right and then stitch the lines to the left, making sure that you're stitching all in the same direction so that the fabric doesn't twist. Also, to be safe, don't stitch over any of the pins. Flip over to the underside and you can see where the batting and the fabric have shifted a bit. Trim all the sides so that the layers are even. On my tea towel, I notice there's a little bit more gold on the right than the left, so I'm just going to trim it down a little bit. The layers are all loose along the sides, so you can zigzag all around to hold in place. Clip the sides together, and you can set the zigzag stitch to about 4 and 4. This narrow zigzag should go over the edges and measure less than 1/4 inch wide. We don't want it to show after adding the binding. This step will just make it a little bit easier when we fold the binding over. For the binding, I'll cut 4 long strips on the bias. You can also cut your binding on the crosswise grain. Place the 45-degree angle line along the edge of the fabric right over to the corner and cut. Fold in half, matching the bias edge. Cut strips 2.5 inches wide. It's also handy if you have this 2.5 inch wide template. To join the strips, place edges with the same angle, right sides together. Slide it over until you have 1/4 inch from the corners to the edge. Then clip in place. If you have a strip that doesn't have the right angles on each end, just place one on top, cut the same angle, then match the edges with right sides together. For each seam, stitch from corner to corner, back tacking at the start and finish. Press all the seams open flat and then carefully press the binding in half with wrong sides together. Then trim away the extra seam. I'm using this side as my main fabric, so I want to start attaching my binding from the other side. Match the edges of the binding to the edge of the pad, starting from the center of one side. About 6 inches from the center, clip all the layers together. We'll stitch the binding all around and stop 6 inches from the center. Place a clip at that mark. With the 1/4 inch seam allowance, start at that first clip, back tack, and then continue stitching with all the edges matching. At all the corners, you're going to stop 1/4 inch from the edge, and then you're going to pivot and then stitch to the corner. Continue stitching about 2 inches and then trim, leaving a 1/2 inch tail. Fold your binding up so that you have a 45-degree angle right to the corner and your outer edges form a straight line. Fold the binding back down so that the fold is in line with the top edge and the side edges match as well. Start your next line of stitching just slightly down from the top. Back tack and then repeat for all the sides and corners. When you get to the second clip, back tack and remove. To join the binding, open up the end and pin it so that it stays flat. Fold up the excess out of your way, pull over the other end, place it on top, open it up, and then fold the end over 1/2 inch. Follow the fold to mark on the bottom piece and then cut along the line. Fold up the corner of the pad, then put the ends right sides together just like the other seams. Again, stitch with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, press, trim, and finish stitching it onto the pad. For all the corners, fold up the binding on both sides. You'll notice that the seam in the corner folds to the left. We want the same on the other side. On the right, fold the binding over so it just covers the stitch line. Flatten the fabric at the corner, pinch at the top edge, and fold the top binding over to create a mitered corner. This will give you a flatter corner without any bulk. Clip in place and continue clipping the binding covering the stitching all around. Set the zigzag stitch to 3.5 and 5. Pull out a nice long length of both threads and then position your needle so that when it's on the left, it goes right into the ditch or the seam between the two fabrics. Start your stitch without back tacking and use a pointy tool to keep the binding in place, covering the stitch line. You can also edge stitch the binding instead of zigzagging. At the corners, have the needle all the way down on the left-hand side, lift your foot, pivot, and continue stitching. To finish the stitching, don't back tack, just overlap one zigzag stitch. Then remove and leave a long tail of thread. On the underside, pull on the bobbin threads until the top threads loop through. Then use something pointy to pull them right through. Separate so you have 2 threads on each side and then tie a double knot. Thread a needle with the 2 strands and stitch through the seam and out the binding. Repeat, trim, and you're left with a really nice finish. This hot pad will easily fit 2 large casserole dishes. Thanks again for watching. Make sure to check out my video up next.